For Theology 101 with Dr. Chris Bounds, we were given the task of researching more into a certain denomination. In order to dig deeper into Anabaptism, I thought I'd bring along my good friend Nick Yoder. So Nick, could you tell us a little bit about your background in Anabaptism?
Sure. Well, I was raised in a Mennonite home, which is very closely related to Amish. Which, curiously enough, my dad used to be Amish, meaning that most of my extended family is currently Amish.
What caused him to make the transition?
The main reason for that is my dad's belief that the use of technology does not determine your salvation. So that was the main reason why he left. He left in his 20s sometime, and then ended up marrying my mom. But he left in such a way that we still have good relations with our Amish relatives.
And you said your mom also grew up in
Yes, my mom is Mennonite too.
Could you tell us a little bit about the history of Anabaptism and what you know about it?
Sure. Well, Anabaptism started when Ulrich Zwingli, Felix Mons, and Conrad Grebel all met in a house in Switzerland, and they baptized each other. And this was the first instance of a believer's baptism, and this was different than what the Catholics used, which was infant baptism. So this was kind of the first step towards establishing themselves as a different religion than Catholicism. So for doing this, they faced quite a bit of persecution, and they ended up having to move around, and they moved from Switzerland to Germany to Russia, and eventually they made their way to the United States, and all this was in search of religious freedom. And during this time, a man named Menno Simons, he kind of established what he believed the interpretation of the Bible should be, and this was within Anabaptism, but it was slightly deviated from what the current view was, and he is known as the father of Mennonites.
Could you discuss a little bit about the Protestant Reformation and what happened to the Mennonites and the Amish during this time?
Sure. Well, we didn't agree with Catholicism, and we didn't really agree with Protestantism all that much either. So instead of really full-heartedly siding with one side or the other, we broke off and formed our own denomination of Anabaptism. So you can find parts of Catholicism and parts of Protestantism in Anabaptism, although we would more closely associate ourselves with Protestants.
Could you discuss some of the distinctions in Anabaptism?
Sure. Well, Anabaptism holds several core values, but three of the big ones are believers' baptism, community, and nonviolence. So, for believers' baptism, we don't believe in infant baptism. We believe that a baptism should be a public declaration of faith. So we don't baptize our infants. Now, there are baby dedications which are similar, but they're not baptisms. So there's that. And then with community, you see this a lot in the Amish faith. Church is not held in one building, it's held in people's homes. So there's a real sense of fellowship there, because they worship together, they work together, they sing together. And I know on Sunday nights, like the youth will get together at someone's house and spend the night fellowshipping, spend the night in fellowship, whether that's playing sports or sitting around a fire and just talking. And then the third one, and probably the biggest core value of Anabaptism, is nonviolence. We don't believe that violence is a productive tool that we can use. So we have developed different ways of expressing our faith. Like we see this in the Crusades, where violence is used to try to expand the Christian faith. This is not something that the Anabaptists would do. Anabaptists are very strong in living out their faith through their life, and finding ways to protest things that they don't like in a very non-violent manner. So if someone would be violent towards them, they wouldn't respond with violence. Instead, they would most likely respond with love. And we can see this in the shooting that happened at an Amish schoolhouse several years ago. There was a shooter who entered a schoolhouse, shot some children, and then ended up shooting himself. And the whole world seemed to be focused on how the Amish would react to this. And they reacted unlike anyone expected, in that they forgave the shooter and helped the family of the shooter. The fact that they didn't respond with violence or hatred, they responded by expressing love and expressing forgiveness. That, in my opinion, is what makes Anabaptism so different than any other religion or any other denomination.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So going back through these three distinctions again, like personally for me, I grew up in a Lutheran household, so my specific story is different because I came into the religion later in my life. So I was baptized when I was about 12. So in your believer's baptism, when were you baptized?
Personally, I was baptized, I believe it was September of 2008, so I would have been 15. But again, it's pretty much whenever you feel called to be baptized, whenever you want to make that public declaration that you are following Christ, that's when you become baptized.
Onto the community. How is like worship and stuff done within homes? Like there's differences between like, you know, just singing the hymns or having an instrument. Like what's different about Anabaptism and other denominations?
I would say for the most part, Anabaptism is less about a show or a performance and more about true connection through worship. The Amish, for example, don't use any instruments. They use only their voices, and it was only recently that Mennonites started bringing instruments into their worship as well. And it started out as just organs and pianos, and it slowly made its way up to including more contemporary worship, which is something that is very new to the Anabaptists, is this idea of contemporary worship.
Do you like more the contemporary or the old style?
It's a great question. It depends. There are times when I prefer contemporary worship, but I enjoy the tradition of singing hymns and using only our voice to create music. Although I wouldn't call myself a singer.
Yeah. With pacifism, is this a strong quality that you see throughout your life?
Yes. It took me quite a while to really own this. I don't know, for a long time I couldn't understand why, like for World War II, for example, I couldn't figure out why Anabaptists wouldn't want to go and fight against Hitler, or why they wouldn't want to go and, free all of these Jewish people who were being killed. But the more that I read about it, the more I realized that the church had the opportunity to take those Jews out of that situation. Like, we had the opportunity to stop Hitler before he came into power. Like, the church had that opportunity, and we could have done it non-violently, but we didn't. And that was one area where the church failed. But I think that the non-violence itself, the concept of that, was still there. It was still was still a very effective means if it would have been utilized.
So, before we wrap things up, could you tell me one strength that you see in the Anabaptist faith and one weakness that you see in it?
Sure. For the strength, I would say the nonviolence. I think it speaks volumes about the character of those who believe in the faith if they can take the violence that's picked against them, and if they can take all the ridicule that other people might have, and if they can respond to that in a positive way with love and forgiveness, such as the Amish community did to that shooter. I just think it speaks volumes about what kind of people are in that faith and how strongly they believe in the faith. As for a weakness, I would say sort of disdain for technology. I'm not sure if disdain is the right word for it, but the fact that the Amish, for example, don't use technology very often doesn't help them expand their faith. And again, they're not really looking to do that so much, but I don't know, people don't really know what it is that they believe, which really makes it hard for others to understand what it is to be an Anabaptist. So I would say that's probably the biggest weakness.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for helping us dig deeper into the Anabaptist faith.
Anytime.